Make sure those of you, excuse me, before you do, make sure that those of you who would like a DVD, I don't know, you've listened to me for an hour, you might not want to do 2 more hours, but if you do, there's a little bit of redundancy, but not much.
How do you agree or disagree with Francis Colling?
I would say we are kindred spirits, pretty much. Yeah. You all know Francis Collins. He's the head of the Human Genome Project. He's written a book called The Language of God. Pretty much on the same page. You know, we come from slightly different theological, religious backgrounds, but I'm willing to overlook his flaws if you have to do it. He's got to do the same for me because they say I have more. We'll see. Any other questions? Yes.
Could you say just a few words, even though you're not a physicist, but the ideal of randomness at the subatomic level, indeterminacy, it seems to be woven into the fabric of matter down as far as we can take it or think we can take it. Is there a theological way of describing or correlating randomness, indeterminacy in nature with human free will? God's sovereign, but our free will is genuine. We're not robots, and yet God's purposes, we really do believe, are ultimately achieved in, through, and around, and despite our free choices, some of which turn out to be very bad. So could you just think a little bit about that? Because I've heard of the randomness idea more in, say, subatomic physics.
I think that's one of the things that's a little bit different. I don't know that anybody's really approached this concept of randomness in this way as it applies to biology, the way that I am. And, you know, I don't know enough about the deeper elements of physics. They're interesting to me. I'm actually reading a book now I shared with the other group last night called Decoding the Universe. And I started last June. And I'm about a third of the way through it. I can only do a little bit. It's too much math. Einstein said mathematics was his major problem, but I'm trying to understand those things as well. I think they do connect all the way up. Or, no, I don't. That's too strong. It's not that I think they do. I think it seems reasonable that you see that progression following all the way up. But
quick follow-up then. You know, Kenneth Miller, biologist, cell biologist at Brown, has written this book a few years ago, Finding Darwin's God. As I recall, in the last couple of chapters, he does, very briefly, a lot of what I think you're trying to do and what you're saying. Is there a connection there?
Kenneth Miller and I would say, are also kindred spirits. Maybe not quite so kindred as Francis Collins, but kindred spirits in the sense that we're trying to draw people to an understanding that we can embrace the realities of our physical, biological world and still hold on to faith.
Including indeterminacy.
Yeah, including indeterminacy. I mean, you're right. I mean, I actually say that, I think on the DVD. There is an element of indeterminacy built right into the fabric of our universe, and also ourselves. You know, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle with electron clouds. I mean, you know, one of our chemists has a sign outside of his door and says, "I may have been here."
I may have been here.
Well, that's a chemist's humor, you know. So, yeah.
I appreciated your talk a lot.
Thanks.
You mentioned that science wants to be free to follow its own agenda, where it leads. And religion doesn't want to be thrown out the window by science.
Right.
And I wonder if the boundary is just that sharp in your mind.
No.
Like, certainly there are issues that arise in practice of science that, as a Christian, you would say, oh, this is an ethical question that my religion bears on that.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I would say I'm more in a continuum. It's the sort of thing that when you give a presentation, you have to try to crystallize concepts, and so I do it. But if you and I were alone, we would probably find lots of intermediate points in there where we would say, yeah, we need to consider that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I'm thinking, for example, the whole issue of the genetic modification and human engineering and issues that arise along those lines. Well, you know, the secular scientist might have quite a different approach to those kinds of issues than Christian science.
Exactly. The science won't change, and the ability to manipulate won't change, but the perspective we bring to it in terms of what we should or shouldn't do, that could be markedly different. Yeah.
So if we imagine God playing with loaded dice, and this might, I can think of one area where this might have implications for us as we think about evolution. So Stephen Jay Gould had this famous replay the tape metaphor. As you know, he claimed that if we went back and did it again, it would never turn out like this. And if we went back and tried it again, it would never turn out like that, and it would just be different every time. And adaptationists, as you know, strongly disagree. So within evolution, people say, no, it's going to be about the same. You might not look like that the next time we run the tape out, but it's going to be about the same. Now, so enter the Christian with loaded dice. Do we have to choose a side in this dispute based on their...
No, I don't think so, because I think Stephen Jay Gould is probably right. Those of you, you know about chaos theory? Lorenz did the original work with chaos theory. It was based upon weather patterns. And it was sort of one of those great finds in science that occur by accident. So he runs this computer program where he's modeling weather systems, and he's then projecting out several days or weeks and seeing what the certain parameters, because the Newtonian perspective on this is that Newtonian is determinist. So if you have, the physicists thought that if you've got all the right parameters defined, then the outcome will always be the same. And so Lorenz does this thing, and he does an accident, and he doesn't, he thought that instead of entering his number the second time with just, well, he actually had to go like 0.2968456, that many decimals. He just changed a small, he only took it out 3 decimal points. He thought that will be insignificant and won't have any effect at all. And then he ran it, completely different. And so this gave rise to what he described at the AAS meetings, I think it was in '72, where he called it the butterfly effect. That a butterfly flapping his wings in Canton, China, would have major dramatic effects on the weather patterns in New York City 2 weeks later. And what it boils to is this idea of, so this chaos theory that says that ultimate outcomes are just way more sensitive to small changes than we ever imagined before. And so what it would mean then is for us to follow the Newtonian thinking that we could specifically identify all the variables precisely in advance is a little bit arrogant, because nobody can do all the variables precisely. And even if you know that it's, you got to have something a certain way, how do you know how many decimal points out to take it? So it raises all those questions. That seemed like it was connected to your question in some way, was it? What? I don't think so. I think that we can... Here's what I think. I think that scientists are far... And this is a cultural thing, too. I think that scientists are far more comfortable with uncertainty than our general culture. Our general culture, particularly as it relates to religions, they need certainty. And scientists, we've been doing this stuff for years, and we thought we had to figure it out, but we were wrong. And so we're okay to let this tension be for a while, with faith and understanding and belief that down the road, as we learn more, it'll begin to form a clearer picture. Maybe if you look at the cryptogram long enough, it'll begin to come into focus. I may not have addressed it completely, but probably as deep as I can go. Yes, Ann. Whoever.
I just want to follow up quickly on his question. Do you think God intended for you to exist?
I don't know. I hope so. My sons hope so, too. Yeah.
Well, if every random mutation had 50-50 chances occurred, and then things could have gone, take it a completely different way. That's partly his question. I think. Do you think God intended for there to be human beings to relate to him? If so, it just seems to me if it's random the way you define random.
I would say...
The dice can't really be loaded. You said it had to be 50-50.
I think I would say... Well, I guess what I'm thinking, and so I'm like the typical scientist, you say something and you try to qualify it. But I think what I'm thinking is that when I say the ultimate outcome was never in question, it doesn't mean that I would be exactly like me. It doesn't mean that I would even be. It would mean that God's ultimate plan, the bigger picture, would arrive at the sentient being, and we may look like dolphins. Who knows? It could look like something we couldn't even imagine. But that wouldn't change if the goal is the spiritual connection. And honestly, from a scientific perspective, we don't know what that is real precisely. But yet, I think most of us in here would agree that we have that spiritual element to us. If that's the goal, then I think it doesn't matter whether I'm here or I look like a dolphin or some other form or appearance, the ultimate outcome is still accomplished. I don't know. I don't want to come up here and